Hello and greetings. Welcome to my art studio here in Leitrim's Iron Mountains. My name is Harriet, and today I will be sharing another one of my short time lapses in my sketchbook. This drawing is another one of the prompts for this year's Drawlloween. Halloween is fast approaching and it's much closer to Halloween now. It's actually the 24th of October. That's how long it's taking me to edit the dialogue for these videos. This day on the footage here is day 4, Candelabra. It's actually 20 days since I filmed this. And the prompt is from Mab's Drawlloween Club, hosted by pop surrealist Mab Graves. And Candelabra is a candle holder or a candlestick with 3 arms on it. A candlestick alone is also referred as a candelabrum, which is the plural for candelabra. Candelabras would mean 2 candelabra. So there's a bit of pointless information about candelabras. So I wondered what I would talk about today. I'll talk about the drawing. I started my sketch today with a white colouring pencil using mainly the 𝕠𝕠𝕪 black and white colouring pencil set. These are a set of 6 chunky colouring pencils. They have a really thick core, so once you've sharpened it, they hold the point for much longer than my other colouring pencils do. The pigment is quite dense, so they're quite hard, which is great for fine details and sharp lines. I like that about them. The white ranges from a pure white to a pinky white and then a pale blue white, and then there's a grey black, which is just a regular black, a black that veers towards the green spectrum, and one that veers towards the blue spectrum. These come very nicely presented in a little tin, which is a little bit superfluous because it's only 6 colour pencils. They have a little sharpener in the tin because they're chunkier than normal colouring pencils, and you need to use the pencil sharpener that they came with. However, I find that they do work in my Tony handle pencil sharpener, which is great. On the downside of them being so chunky, they don't fit into the pencil extenders very well. I have to squeeze them in pretty tight because when they sharpen really low, I like to put the pencil extender on. And I'm combining them with Faber-Castell colouring pencils. I'm using my mid-tone sketchbook again. I think today's drawing for me was inspired by Disney's Lumière from the 1991 movie Beauty and the Beast. Lumière translates as light, and the Lumières also means the enlightened. I had pondered Lumière as the character. I wondered when the movie was set, and I think to throw a date at it would be the early 18th century, maybe into the later 18th century, in around there, which was the Age of the Enlightenment. In France, the Age of Enlightenment was called the Lumières. I often see that in many of these Disney films, especially the Disney films. They're so kind of obviously building on a tradition, like the Brothers Grimm rewriting these fairy stories. It's always interesting to see the symbolism that they load into them. On one hand, we have the character Cogsworth, and he's the very traditional character. He's keeping things running like clockwork. The castle is running a certain way. He doesn't bend on tradition. There's a part of the movie where Cogsworth is taking Belle on a tour of the castle and pointing out the flying buttresses, and he says, "If it's not Baroque, don't fix it." And he is, of course, referring to the Baroque period of aesthetics, which predates the Age of Enlightenment that the Lumières were part of. And that really sums up where he's coming from as a character. He's traditional, he's reserved, he's trying to keep everything the status quo as it has been traditionally, and things are all getting turned upside down, and he's really resisting that. Lumière has this rebellious nature and got this standoff with Cogsworth. I think that's what was happening around that time between the Enlightened and the people who went before. Some of the major themes in the Enlightenment were individualism, equality, and skepticism. the role of religion in society. All these ideas and notions were on the table to be puzzled out. Things were changing. Society was going through a kind of shift, and they were questioning some of the old ways. So the Candelabra in Beauty and the Beast is Lumière, and I definitely think that he is referencing that enlightened man. He is the maitre d' of the castle. He instantly invites Belle's father in and sits him by the fire, and unlike the Beast, who was once the prince of the castle, he doesn't have the same values as the aristocracy. He's more willing to let this stranger into the house. And he's also hopeful for the future, like even though things are looking rather bleak for them all turned into object, no chance of this mean beast who used to be the prince finding it in him to show love or be a sound person. Lumière is the light. He brings the light to the situation. Lumière remains hopeful that the curse would eventually break, restoring the humanity of himself and all his allies, hinged on whether or not the beast could learn to love another and earn their love in return. I really do think the story of Lumière, like the story of Beauty and the Beast, especially the Disney version, is a story of the Enlightenment. This was an age when they were really coming out of the Dark Age. And a lot of these original fairy stories were shaping the new middle class that was coming in. There's an air of the carnivalesque. The Age of the Enlightenment came after the medieval carnivals of Europe, and this notion of the carnivalesque, people shaking up the system, having the opportunity to freely speak and poke fun at the established way and make fun of each other, the way society was run, and the rulers, the authoritarian figures. The Lumières really embodied the spirit of the carnivalesque. Questioning the order of things, questioning ethics, coming down on the same level, finding your humanity. I'm getting to the end of my time-lapse now, and I've ended up with a witchy kind of character. She has little horns, and she's wearing a Rococo-style costume with little bat pockets on it. And the candelabras, the holders are little cauldrons. So she's quite witchy, and she has very pale skin, and I put some red shading around her eyes. There's something nice about her. She's the integration of the dark side and the light side, which I think is an enlightened state. Kawaii, noir, cute and dark. I suppose the more you get towards the light, the darker the shadows are. If you've made it this far, through my ramblings about the Age of Enlightenment, Beauty and the Beast, and colouring pencils, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you again soon. Bye bye!